Welcome to user training for the Cloud DPE Development Studio. This is Gene D'Angelo. For these training sessions, I am working on a client PC located in Southeast Florida, and I am signed on to a small server located in Plano, Texas. In this session, I will talk about working with tables from the table browser. If you remember, we can open up several tables from the browser. We can and they create multiple tabs. So if we open up this table and this table, each one appears in its own tab. And if you remember, we can of course move those tabs. We can make them floating, and that way we can compare tables or view two tables at one time on different screens and so on. So, but from the browser, you do have various options, and I'm going to first of all just take some of these from the top. If you right click in the browser, there's a lot of options you have here. One is the show find position toolbar, and it's just a toolbar up here that you can hide to give you more real estate for the browser itself, or you can open it up and it does several things. For one, we can search for text anywhere in the table, in any column, and let's say that we want to find the city Columbus. Happens to be my hometown, and if we hit find, it will find the first occurrence of the city Columbus. Of course, if Columbus also appeared in the provider name over here, it would also find it there. Let me just expand this a little bit. Now if I hit it again, it'll find the next occurrence of Columbus, and so on. Okay, so that's how we use the text define feature. And here we have the position option, where we can position the browser at any place we want. Let's say we want to go at position 1200. We can position it there, and we would position automatically at 1200. We can then scroll down by 1200, or we can scroll down by any number we want, let's say 100, or we can scroll up by whatever number is in this box here. You also have a sort icon. If I click on that, it brings up a list of the fields, and you can specify the order that you want the table sorted in. So let's say I want to sort it, let's say by zip, and within zip maybe by the street. Up here I can specify the name that I want the output table to be in. I can either replace the table I'm working on, or I can specify a new table name and say OK. And it runs a little seed which does the sort and produces the output. And so here we have a sort that's by zip, and within zip you can see that it's sorted by the street name, starting of course with numbers usually. So that is the sort functionality from the find position toolbar. We'll just continue on down. The find command is very useful. It brings up an expression builder, and this expression builder is a filter that it will then use to run a little seed and produce another table that only have the records that satisfy the filter. So for example, if we want to, in this case, say I want to find all cities that has the word beach in it, and you can make this as complex as you want. We're going to just do something simple here for now. So we're going to say OK. It will suggest an output table name. In here it's suggesting a table name find2, and this number will increment each time you run the find against a particular table, but it's only a suggestion. So we could say find beaches and say OK. It runs the quick seed, and now we've got all of the records that have the word beach in it. So that's the find command. So there's a lot of data mining that can be done directly from the browser. So let's just keep going down the list here. The next option is export to Excel or text. Before I show you that, I want to point out that in the preferences, if you go up to View and look at Preferences, there is in the table browser options, there's an export column delimiter, which you can specify as tab, pipe, or comma. So whatever you have specified in here is what it will use when you export a table from the browser. So if we go here and we right-click and say Export to Excel or Text, we're given the option of deciding where we want to put it on our client and what is the name of the table. It defaults to the name of the file that's exported. It defaults to the table name. I like to use the text option because it gives me a little more control of where and how I import the data. And if I just say Save, you ask if you want to include column names or not in the first row. I'm going to say yes, and here you can choose how many rows you want to export. I'm just going to do 1,000 right now since this is almost 1,000,000 rows, just to save some time. And you can see that it exported that. And if we go to the directory, we'll see here it is here, and it has been exported. And if we look at it in Notepad, of course, it's a tab delimited type structure, which we can then import into Excel or wherever. Okay. So the next option is sort, which we already covered because this is the same option as you have available here on the icon in the Find Position toolbar. Then we have View Properties. View Properties produces another tab which shows some information, the compression ratio, and different things about the table. It also has a tab for the schema, and if there are any indices, it lists the indices here. It also allows you to create indices as well, which we won't get into right now. So that is a separate tab that comes up when you select that option. The View Schema is just the same thing, but only the one tab. Instead of having the indices and the properties, it just shows you the schema tab, a separate one. The next option is the View Row Details, and this allows you to look at the details of one row at a time in vertical form, and you can of course move from row to row. This option is also available if you just double click any particular row, it'll bring up the same thing. So that's two ways of getting to that. The next option, there's a couple of options now. Well, first let me talk about the freeze column option. The freeze column option enables you to freeze, let's say we want to freeze the NPI and the provider name, so we could say freeze provider 2, and here now we can pan across without losing the NPI and the provider name. So you can do this at any column position across the browser. So this is very similar to the freeze columns options that you have in Excel. And here we can unfreeze it. In the next area, there's two options: auto size all columns, and auto size all columns fill. First, I'm going to show you the one for fill. And what this does is actually auto size so that, and it's not available for all tables. For tables that are really too wide, you won't see this option available. But here we have, you see the vertical scroll bar is gone because we're looking at all the columns. So we're seeing all the columns available in the table. So it sized everything so that you could see all the columns at one time. The other option is kind of the reverse. If you auto size all columns here, what that does is expand the column width so that the larger of either the column title or the column contents is accommodated, and this doesn't do it totally like Excel, in that first of all it doesn't do it for everyone, and when you do this, it has sort of a balance between how much is filled and how much blank space is after, and so on. And it only does it for the visible area. So you can see down here there's ... because there's a little more information available, but most of them are fully visible. Same thing here. Most of them are fully visible. There's a couple that are not quite there. These, it's all visible and so on. So it does a nice balance without leaving a whole lot of white space in the column width in the contents. Now, of course, similar to Excel, we can also auto-size a column, one particular column, by double-clicking on the separation between the columns. And so here you'll see it adjusted to the maximum column, the maximum length of a value for all the displayable area. So that is the auto-size features. The next option is to show hide columns. For that, this gives us the option of excluding certain columns from the display. And for example, here we might want to exclude or include, of course, you're really selecting which columns you want to include in the browser. So maybe perhaps here I'm going to eliminate Street 2 since it's rarely populated, and I'm not interested in what's there. And the country is almost always USA, so I'm going to eliminate that. And now if I say OK, those two columns are no longer visible in the browser. So this gives you a way of selecting the columns you want to display. The next option is Format. For that, I want to show you some examples using a table with some numeric fields in it. So I'm going to bring up this table here and pan across to find these numeric fields. So there's quite a few numeric fields here. If I select a particular column and I say to Format, it gives me an Excel-like formatting option where I can change the formatting and I can add different options like percent signs and so on, or I can just change the number of decimal places. So if I change the number of decimal places here to 4, now it's showing 4 decimal places. And so that's one way of doing it. The other way that it can, and by the way, if one other thing I should show you, that if you close this is now 4 characters for this particular column. If I close this and go back and reopen it, now it retains that formatting option in the table. It stores that in the header, so it's retaining that in the table. Okay, another way of doing this is to you can do all the numeric columns by using the adjust scale. This affects the entire table. So if I adjust this to 3 decimal positions, as you can see, everything is now 3 decimal positions. And I can also say no formatting. So now everything is showing all the available digits on all the fields. For this particular option, if I close the table and reopen it, you'll see that the adjust scale is temporary and has gone away. However, the original change we made to the individual column is retained in the display. So that is the formatting and the adjust scale options. The next option is the copy option, or Control-C. And so here is where we can select a particular rectangle of values anywhere in the spreadsheet. We can take say in a column, or a single column, or multiple columns, something like this. Do a Control-C, which I just did, and go over to, first of all, we could go over to something like Excel and hit Control-V, and that information is pasted into Excel. One thing that I did here, of course, is I need to expand these, and now I can bring them together. So you can see that it pasted the values that we had highlighted here into Excel. Okay. So you can do that in any rectangle of areas. You can bring it onto Excel. If I just do it in Notepad, of course, it shows up like this. So, and it's showing it's tab delimited, I believe, in between each one. I believe. Let's see, it's tab delimited. Yes, it's tab delimited. Okay, there's a couple of other options here that are interesting options. They're very, very handy. Copy special and copy special settings. Now, copy special settings give us some options such as, well, primarily whether we want to have commas or what kind of delimiters we want to use if we copy multiple parts of a column for a whole string of values, for example. Let me just give you an example. It's easier to watch from example. So, and you have an add quotes option here. So let's just say it's comma. Let's not use add quotes. Say OK. And over here, now we're going to just select a group of values, and we're going to use the copy special. Now, if we then paste that, let's say we paste it into Notebook, Notepad, I mean, you'll see that now the list has commas. It's the list, but it's list delimited by commas. So I can go back and, for example, I can now change this to, let me go back and change my settings to add quotes, and maybe with the commas, and say OK. And now we say copy special. And if I this time go to bring up a notepad and paste it, you can see that it has the same list with quotes around it and delimited by commas. So you can, and so that gives you the option of putting in a number of different kinds of delimiters. This is particularly helpful when you're using lists of values in certain areas. Let me just, in fact, let me see if I can give you a real good example of that by doing a find command. Let's say I want to do the find command here, and if I do a find command and I bring up the member option, and I'm going to look for the provider zip, and now add a comma, and now paste in that list that I just captured. It now fills in the member option, so that if we say OK and run that particular option, it now gives us a list of 436 rows for all of the rows that contain those zips. So this table is now limited to that list of zips that we had captured. So that's how you would use the special copy command. And then, of course, you can put this into a seed, into a member function, or any place where a list is used to enumerate a number of values. Okay, so let's look at what else we have here. We have a select all command. In the select all command, we're really just selecting everything in the display area. If I then do a Control C, or either copy, and then if let me bring up my Excel spreadsheet that I was using before, add another sheet. I'm going to show you a little trick I use sometimes for this type of thing. If I just grab a whole bunch of columns like that and I expand them, and now I go back in and do the Control V, it just imported everything that I had. It was in the display area. Now I can do the select all on the Excel and do auto size for all the columns. Now I have a very nice formatted Excel spreadsheet with the information that I had over here that I had captured from the display. And you notice it also brought in the column, the row number as well, the record number. So that's how you can use a select all in order to put things into Excel. And by the way, you can use this same trick that I used by maximizing the width, pasting, and then doing a select all and auto sizing to bring in any amount of data, any rectangle of data that you might want to select and copy out of the browser. Okay, let's see what's left. We have display settings. Display settings is basically, we won't go into this that much, but this gives you some options very similar to Excel. So you can change the font size, you can modify the font, you can modify the background, and you can see over here where the rows are alternate rows, or kind of have a shading to them, and alternate rows, and the other ones are white. So you have that option here of the background you want on the odd and even rows. So you're showing azure for the odd rows and white for the even rows. So there's a number of just things to improve the appearance of your browser. Here, we'll just do something. This is the last option. I'm going to go ahead and just choose something here. Let's just say I will choose this particular option here. And it's going to, actually, it looks like it's going to make things a whole bunch smaller. And maybe for the odd rows, I will change that to yellow, for example. Okay. And now if I say OK, now I get a different formatted display with a different font, and the alternate rows is formatted differently. That just gives you an idea of some of the flexibility you have in how you set up your browser. And I believe that is it. The last option is, of course, close. That closes the table that we were looking at. So this completes the review of the functions available to you in the table browser.